I have some questions about Donald Trump's security policies and how they're going to be implemented going forward. He said that we don't thoroughly enough vet refugees to screen them for terrorist connections before they come to America, making Americans less safe and more vulnerable to terrorist attack. He says that's why he banned people from 7 Muslim-majority countries from traveling to America, and these countries' population combined is over 200 million people. Now, there's been much discussion about why this ban is going to be ineffective, counterproductive. It's going to cause people in these countries to unite against America. It's going to drive away our allies. It's going to erode relations with these countries. It's going to be a recruiting tool used by jihadi groups like ISIS. And it fails to engage in a more serious level on actual threats to America, such as people in Europe who go and travel to Syria to fight for ISIS and go back to Europe. Those people, when they're not caught, can come to America without even getting a visa, and they're not thoroughly screened. Or for instance, people like the alleged shooter in the recent Quebec mosque shooting. There was no such screening to prevent him from coming to America if he wanted to, and there's no ban in place for people from Canada coming to America. And when this policy is shown to fail, when it doesn't keep America safer, in addition to all the examples of how it's devastating people and making people's lives miserable and depriving America of the services and jobs that these people from these countries perform here, Trump, his administration, and Republicans are going to be able to say that we need even tighter controls on more countries, that we need more security measures, potentially more spying, more policing. But here's another problem with this policy that I don't see being discussed very much. If Trump believes that the tens of thousands of refugees in this country have not been thoroughly vetted, and that other people who have immigrated or either here visiting from these countries that are banned have not been properly screened for terrorist connections, what's to stop him from using more crackdowns domestically against Muslims and Arabs? He also said that he believes torture works. So what's to stop him from trying to implement that policy on refugees here, on immigrants here, on Americans here, who many of these refugees and immigrants are? They are Americans now. Why wouldn't he try and keep pitting Republicans, Democrats, and the rest of the country against themselves and against each other to keep rolling through these security policies in which he and Sean Spicer are claiming this is necessary to keep America safe, that they don't want to be reporting on dead Americans from terrorists? After all, if these people are already here, if we already have so many refugees we've taken in over decades, as well as many immigrants from these banned 7 countries, such as Iraq, Iran, Syria, what's to stop them from saying, we haven't done enough, we need to do more, we need to crack down internally? Torture works, spying I'm sure they believe works, and Sean Spicer, the press secretary, said that if people in the government don't like the president's policies, they can either get in line or go. Meaning he believes they're being an impediment to American safety and protecting Americans against terrorism, and that they have some other agenda other than keeping America safe. Not that they disagree, not that they in good conscience believe this policy won't work or it's counterproductive. So if the administration actually believes that, what's to stop them from saying that all protesters, journalists, civil rights activists are actually fighting to keep America less safe? That they're fighting the administration efforts to keep terrorism out of the country, that they don't care if Americans are going to die, that they need to be stopped because they're making America more dangerous. What's to stop them from cracking down? We already know the government has done this in many cases to many protest groups, especially during the Vietnam era, the civil rights era. We just learned that the FBI has all kinds of tools for spying on people and trying to get them to inform on protesters, and I'll link to all that in the description below. What's to stop them from saying protesters, critics, political opponents, and journalists are all keeping America less safe and disrupting the government's efforts to fight terrorism? Couldn't they say then that we're all colluding to support terrorists, that we're actually giving them sympathy? I've already been hearing discussion to similar effect from all kinds of right-wing pundits and people in the alt-right. Not just recently, but for years they've been saying this. This morning I heard Chris Plant say that the protesters are just shedding tears for terrorists, meaning there's no serious effort on their part to actually respect the rights of Muslims and keep Americans safe. They're just foolishly and selfishly trying to invite in more terror because they irrationally hate Donald Trump. I listened to Rush Limbaugh say similar things today. He said that most protesters are being paid and that this isn't a genuine protest movement, but that these people are irrationally opposing anything Trump does, and they'll hate anything he puts forward, no matter what, no matter how well constructed his policies are. So in other words, Rush Limbaugh is saying that we're actually giving more sympathy to terrorists than we are to keeping America safe, and that we're actually making it more difficult for the administration to protect America. These people don't believe that there's legitimate, genuine criticism of these policies that ban people without any due process, without considering whether they actually pose a threat, without any evidence that they do pose a threat to America. They believe that this is actually a wise policy and that people who are protesting it and criticizing it are just irrationally hateful of Trump. So if Trump, with the support of these thinkers putting forward these arguments, believe that torture absolutely works, believe that bans from Muslim majority countries work, what's to stop them from implementing more and more militaristic and brutal policing at home, just like they're trying to do around the world, alienating our allies, trying to label people who oppose this as being irrational? Sean Spicer making a false argument saying that hundreds of thousands of people were able to conveniently travel to America while only 109 were temporarily inconvenienced for our safety, when the executive order that Trump signed had nothing to do with keeping those hundreds of thousands of people able to conveniently travel. All it did was needlessly disrupt and end up sending back to countries people who wanted to come here, people who wanted to travel, see their families. Already there are families who are facing going back to war zones like Syria who are devastated over this, people who have worked alongside the United States for years and wanted to help this country, people who stand to be good allies of the US, aside from the fact that it's the decent thing to do to let people travel freely, to let people make new lives, to escape war zones, to be able to meet with their families and friends and work. If the administration can rewrite truth like this, what's to stop them from cracking down more domestically when this ban is shown to not be enough to prevent terrorism? When they're saying that people don't have legitimate criticism of the government, but that they're actually disrupting the government's efforts to keep America safe? They would have no reason to stop that. They have absolutely every reason to try and crack down on people more, to crack down on free speech, on religious expression, on journalism. And they've already been doing that, by the way. It's been a bipartisan thing. It happened under Obama, and it's already been a policy of America. It happened under Obama, cracking down on journalists and whistleblowers. It happened under Bush. And Trump is merely inheriting that whole apparatus and expanding it. And what about the rest of the Muslim world? When this ban of these first 7 countries isn't enough to keep America safe, which it doesn't make any sense why it would keep America safe. For instance, Sean Spicer and Donald Trump said if we announce the ban ahead of time, then that would indicate to terrorists that they should just move up their flight itineraries to travel into America. And yet Sean Spicer announced in a press briefing that the administration is considering more measures to keep America safe. And to understand that, all you have to do is ask victims of the Boston Marathon bombing or San Bernardino shooting. So if that's really the case, how is Sean Spicer not undermining the administration's efforts to keep America safe by announcing that the administration is considering further restrictions to keep terrorists from coming to America? Won't they want to move up their travel plans now? Won't they want to come into the country before the next round of travel bans are implemented? So this makes no sense. This is internally inconsistent, it's incoherent, it's self-serving, it's a way of sort of sabotaging our safety, all in the name of increasing crackdowns on Muslims and against Muslim countries. It alienates our allies, it makes Muslims think that we don't respect them, we don't trust them, and we won't respect their rights. It drives people to unite with anti-American sentiment in Muslim majority countries because they don't view America as friends but as persecuting them and preventing them from traveling freely and seeing their families and finding opportunities for work, as well as escaping war zones, famine, corruption, devastation. It's almost like a cynical ploy on the administration's part to sabotage our efforts for safety against terrorism and to increase their own power to crack down on Muslims, to wage more war, to give out more war contracts, to increase their police and surveillance power. Because they know that this ban itself won't be enough to keep Americans safe from terrorism. Now obviously I don't think they see it the way that the critics of this program see it, but they know that further measures are going to need to be implemented. They think it's justified, but whether you think it's justified or not, everybody on this issue basically understands that more policies are going to be put in place because from the administration's point of view, it's definitely not going to be enough to just ban people from these 7 Muslim majority countries from traveling to America to keep Americans safe from terrorism. And we have their rationales for their policies. We understand what Trump wants. He said in his campaign he wants a ban on all Muslim immigration. It's hard to roll back security measures that are said to be only temporary, let alone just any law. We still have laws, for instance, from the Great Depression propping up milk prices, even though we're no longer in the Great Depression. The Patriot Act was supposed to be a temporary measure, and yet it's been in place for 16 years now. So what happens next? If travel from these 7 countries being banned isn't enough, which countries are going to be next? What war policies are going to be next? What surveillance is going to be next? What crackdowns on protesters, critics, journalists, and political opponents are going to be next? What police powers are going to be next? Will torture be next? It's never ending. There will never be enough. If you want an example of this, look at North Korea. If you want an example of this, look at North Korea. They never have enough ability from the regime's point of view to keep the country safe from security threats. They need more bans, more crackdowns, more prisons, more labor camps, more executions, more spying, more informing, more nationalist posturing, more warlike policies. And in the process, they end up creating more and more enemies, so they know on some level that they could never roll back those policies because they've created so many enemies out of ordinary North Koreans who have a personal vendetta now, who have suffered, who have lost family and friends because of their policies, and because of their brutal oppression. Now that's obviously a very extreme case, and we have a lot of protections in this country to keep us from being in that position. But the president has so much power to roll those back, as he is already doing and as previous administrations have built up. This is a bipartisan problem. The problem is much bigger than Trump because each administration has expanded the executive's power to make more wars, often in secret, to bypass Congress, to make more police power, more surveillance power, bypass due process. And Trump is merely inheriting that, and sooner or later someone like him was bound to. So Democrats are to blame for overlooking it when Obama was using this power to kill civilians, and Democrats frequently deflected blame for Obama's war policies by claiming it's not the right time to criticize Democrats, that at least he's smarter than a Republican, he's better than Bush, he's better than Romney. Basically, they keep strategically positioning themselves for political power by giving up their principles. So in the end, they're running for nothing, they're defending nothing, and they have no one to blame but themselves for not exciting people and providing real opposition to someone like Trump. And Republicans are merely more craven about supporting security state measures. They did so under Bush. They merely wanted Obama to expand Bush's war powers even more than Obama did. Obama did expand Bush's war powers, many of the worst ones. And Democrats were silent on this, or they actively cheered these policies on, as did Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton wanted to expand these war policies even more than Obama. She supported the Iraq War, the bombing in Libya, all kinds of CIA bombings, all kinds of covert wars. She was a horrible candidate, and Democrats wanted to silence criticism of her as unfair, as if she was owed the election, like it was a coronation. So consider those questions, be informed, inform yourselves, and I'm going to provide links in the description below with more information.